guys, today we are introducing a new product to the channel. And the product that we are introducing are cam install kits. The cams that we are running on this car are Schneider Racing cams, reground cams. We went with the most aggressive grind, and the kit that I am selling only applies to that. For those of you that are not familiar with how reground cams work, basically they make the cam look larger by grinding some of the base circle of the camshaft off. As a side effect of doing this, you have to take up the lash that is created by taking material off of the base circle. Now, these engines do have hydraulic lash adjusters, meaning they will compensate for very small changes in the base circle dimensions, similar to a pushrod engine that has hydraulic lifters. That being said, they take enough material off of these camshafts that the stock lash adjuster does not have enough range to take up the lash. If you don't take care of this, you will have an engine that makes all kinds of lifter clatter at idle. With these camshafts on this engine, we have found that they make about 100 horsepower with boost, and back calculating what it should make naturally aspirated, it's worth about 50 horsepower. So alongside this, you will have to get yourself some of the valve springs that I recommend. They are spec'd for a 2JZ. They only work with the 02 to 05 valve spring retainers. So let's show off the kit. So here is what is included in the kit. You will see in the back there are some lash adjusters. Those are for the intake side of the engine. They will replace the original lash adjusters in the engine. And then up front, you will see we have some shims. Those will go underneath of the original lash adjusters on the exhaust side. The reason that we can't just shim the intake side is because the factory engine does not have a pocket for the shim to sit in. This means that the shim can literally just rattle out of the engine and you will lose all of your lash adjustment. Alright guys, so I briefly want to go through how to do the camshaft swap. Now I should mention that all of the instructions that I give in this video are just guidelines for how we do the job. We are not liable for any damages, injuries, or issues that you have during this install. If you drop a valve, it's on you. If you lose timing on your engine and you have to tear it out of the car, it's on you. If you fill a cylinder with air and you didn't lock the crankshaft and your finger gets sucked into the engine, it's on you. This process can be a little bit tedious at times, but for the most part it's pretty straightforward. Some specialty tools that you'll need are this tool, which wedges the timing chain tensioner, and this tool, which is used to compress your valve springs in order to remove them so you can put the new ones on. Now, I mentioned earlier that the kit does not come with valve springs, but you should upgrade your valve springs if you're going to run these cams. The factory valve springs operate very close to coil binds, so they could not accept more lift as it is. Also, they may not have enough force in the valve spring to control the valve, but that's not proven. So either way you look at it, they need upgraded. While we're on the topic of valve springs, you're really going to need some way to lock the crankshaft of your engine. The reason for this is while we are changing the valve springs, we need to fill the cylinders with air. The only way to get the valve springs out of the engine is to remove the camshafts, and because of that, the engine is vulnerable to having issues with the timing chain coming loose or the tensioner coming loose, or just bad things happening if the engine were to rotate while we were filling it with air. Alright, so this is a pretty basic process. So the first step is to get the valve cover off and everything out of your way. So that's pretty simple. It's going to vary on your chassis. If you're working on a Trailblazer, I'm sorry. Another thing I should probably go over is these flats in the back of the camshafts. When these two flats are level, that means the engine is at top dead center. It's probably a good idea to line this up with top dead center before you insert this tool, but it's not 100% required. It just gives you a good place to go back to. After you've gotten past this, you will need to retain the timing chain tensioner. That is where this wedge tool comes into play, and basically it will slip down in here like so, and it will be pretty obvious where it needs to go. I'll include a picture that's from the instructions for this tool. Now you want to be careful with this tool. If you put it in too hard, the timing chain tensioner will collapse and it will strip all the teeth off of it and basically no longer tension your timing chain. Ask me how I know. I've been there on this exact engine before, and it's not fun to fix. So basically you want to insert this in between the timing chain and the bolt that is down there, and you want to give it a few very light taps. You don't need to go insane. Just put a little bit of force on the timing chain tensioner to keep it in place. So now that we got our timing chain retainer in the engine, we can take our camshaft sprocket bolts loose. You can lay them forward. GM also makes a tool that bolts onto here, and it basically picks up on the front of the camshaft so that you can pull them off and it will retain the camshaft sprocket. You can do that, but the only issue there is on the 06 and later engines, I recommend that you advance your exhaust cam one tooth. So you'll have to work that out and, rotate it one tooth, and then you can hold it with the timing sprocket retainer tool. We advanced the exhaust cam sprocket on the 06 and later engines because they have bigger valves and bigger domes, and when you get too much exhaust duration, it can get into piston to valve clearance issues when you give it all the VVT. So next step is to take all of your camshaft saddle bolts loose. You want to take them out very evenly. I'd go like a half a turn to a turn at a time. Just work your way back and forth, and gradually the camshaft will work its way up until it is fully loose. Then you'll take your camshafts out. Then you can do your valve springs. Now you cannot do your valve springs unless the camshafts are out. Kind of a pain, I know. But basically this guy will bolt down onto your threaded coil bolts. While the cams are out, I recommend that you take the followers off and take the lash adjusters out. Put your new lash adjusters in on the intake side. Shim the exhaust side. A good way to insert the shims in is to take a screwdriver with a magnet on the side of it and pick up your shim, and then you can insert the thing down in orientation where it needs to go. Take the magnet off the screwdriver, pull the screwdriver out, it will release the shim where you placed it, and then just do that 11 more times, and then put your factory lash adjusters back into the exhaust side. After that, you will take all of your followers and put them back in location. And then you will put your new camshafts in place, and you will gradually tighten down all of the camshaft saddle bolts. When you install your new camshafts, make sure that the flats in the back are level. It's kind of a pain. You have to tighten it very evenly. Be very careful. Don't put too much tension on one side. You could bend the camshaft. Also, you could risk stripping bolts if you don't tighten it evenly. Make sure that your followers are on the camshaft lobe good on every single follower, and just gradually tighten the thing down. Then you can reinstall your camshaft sprocket bolts. Then, if you have advanced your camshaft, you will have to rotate your exhaust cam to get it to meet up with the exhaust cam sprocket. And then it's basically the reverse of disassembly. You'll be making tons of power before you know it. So I hope you liked today's video. I hope it was informative for you. And I hope that you think about adding a camshaft to your Vortec 4200. I think they're well worth the money. I mean, 100 horsepower is pretty hard to argue with. Also, the sound of the engine is quite a bit more wicked. So if you're into the sounds, I would definitely consider getting a camshaft. With that, I think that's all we have time for today. I will leave a link in the description on where you can buy the camshaft install kits. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.